way they describe it is that the first drinks makes you thirsty for the second drink, and the second drink makes you thirsty for the third drink. So most social drinkers, after the first and second drink, they're satisfied. The alcoholic, the first and second drink only makes you want to drink even more. People relapse. That's simple. So medically assisted therapy that's out there today are phenomenal drugs. They don't get someone high, but what they do is they manage the craving and they manage some of the brain functions that allow somebody to be stable enough to function in the world again. I think there's an urgency with people in early recovery. They want so desperately to achieve something and get it right and show you that they want to do it. There's such a desperation to make that happen.
Well, hello everyone. This is Shankar, Poncelet, Antréa, Ferguson, and Todd Dugas. We are live once a week with ShankX Weekly, where we try to highlight people, customers, and other important matters. And we want to talk about topics that are helpful to the community. And today we have a very, very important guest, Todd Dugas. Do I pronounce your last name correctly, Todd?
You did very well.
All right. Todd, you are the CEO of a recovery center here in San Antonio. And because of the importance of National Recovery Month, which is not this month, but still worth talking about, we have you on the show. If you would briefly tell us about, really briefly tell us about your recovery center, and then we would also ask you to, we're always curious to know what was the childhood or the youth of our guest like.
Well, thank you for the introduction. I am the CEO of New Choices Treatment Centers. The program offers an array of levels of care for addiction. We have detox and residential, PHP and IOP services. The center has 20 beds and we're looking to expand, but we've been in business for a few years now in San Antonio. We've had really good success and it's real exciting to be part of that team.
Yes, we have seen the center, and obviously we also collaborate, and it's really amazing to see a center here in San Antonio that changes so many people's lives. But talking about changing people's lives, again, we know it takes a lifetime's journey to get to a point where you can lead such a center, and we're really curious to know about your life. So what was your childhood and your youth like, Todd?
I started my experience with addiction early in life. There was generational addiction in my family. My grandfather, my maternal grandfather, was actually in the state hospital for addiction before I was born. And he struggled with alcoholism for years, as well as my paternal grandfather. And so there was a lot of alcoholism in the family. It wasn't an abusive family, just a lot of drinking. I actually drank from a child, which was common. I mean, beer was actually put in babies' bottles to help them sleep. And apparently I like to take naps when I was a child. I drank alcohol pretty common with family members. It wasn't until I was 10 years old that my drinking became a problem. But until then, it was social. It was at family functions. I would take a sip of beer. I was actually the beer runner. I would go and get beer for adults, open the beer and take a sip and give them the rest. Sometimes I was thirsty and drank quite a bit of it just because I was playing, and we had family functions every week. We probably had 3 or 4 family functions every week. When I was 10, I actually drank hard liquor for the first time. And I knew something was different because other kids would not drink hard liquor like I did. And then at 13 was my first blackout because I didn't have access to hard liquor. My parents drank beer, but they didn't drink hard liquor. So at 13, my 13th birthday, we kind of raided the liquor cabinets of the parents and had a camp out, and I had my first blackout that night. And after that, I drank pretty alcoholically until I stopped at 20 years old. My parents realized there was a problem because they'd hear stories from cousins. We would in a small town, and my cousins and I went to the same places. And as a teenager, football games and on Friday night, and just driving around town on Saturday night and Sunday afternoon at the park. And my parents started hearing stories about my drinking, and I was a blackout drinker. I probably blacked out 2 to 3 times a week, and I drank probably 2-3 times a week, and I blacked out at least 2 to 3 times. So I was a heavy drinker early on.
Now, were you able to kind of go the natural course of, were you kind of functional in terms of schooling and just the path that a young person goes? Was that possible for you?
Yeah, I was an AP student. I was in sports. By my grades, my parents didn't see any problem. I was an AP student. I started working at an early age. I actually started working at the age of 12. I was an ambitions kid. I was in some trouble, but the trouble I was in was kind of seemed normal to my parents. It wasn't until they heard the stories from my cousins about me blacking out that they became concerned. And we had one family function where I did drink at the family function, and I blacked out. My parents realized that, I drank heavy. I was 15. My brother was graduating high school. They had a party for him. I started drinking quite a bit. For me, it wasn't a lot because by then I'd been drinking regularly. My mother made a comment, "You're going to feel really bad tomorrow morning," thinking it was my first experience drinking heavy. And without thinking, I told her, "No, I'll be fine, like always." And it got her attention that it was not unusual for me to drink that heavy. It was just unusual for them to be around me when I drank that heavy. And the next day I woke up and just like every other day. And she realized that I must have been drinking heavily for a while. At 16, my parents put me in treatment. And they put me in the adult unit for alcoholism because I was drinking as heavily as most of the men and the adults. And from 16 until 20, I had periods of time where I tried to stop drinking. When I came out of treatment at 16, I had intended not to drink or not drink as much. And I think I lasted 8 days. And then I started drinking again. And I had some great friends. They were really good friends. They'd watch out for me. They'd try to keep me out of trouble. They'd try to make sure I was safe when I was drinking. So I had a really good group of friends. They were all AP students also, really good kids. And they did their best to try to get me to slow down or stop drinking. So when I decided to stop, they were all supportive of me not drinking. It just took me several years to get that point.
So here we have Mary Bobbitt watching us live here. Hi, Mary. She says, "Hi, guys. Thank you so much, Mary, for checking in." And if I wanted to mention, if live viewers have questions, you can submit those in the comments. That is not a problem. Yeah, so I'm trying to understand a young child like that, a young boy. At what point do they realize there might be a problem here that is bigger than what I can handle right now? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I mean, the first time I drank the hard liquor at 10, I knew there was a problem. I actually drank Jim Beam and hot Fresca soda combined, half and half, and no one else would drink it except me. I knew that was strange, but the sensation I had from the alcohol was something I had not experienced previously. So I tried to manage the two between feeling really good when I drank and trying to manage the consequences. And as long as I can manage the consequences, I thought I was okay. And again, with so many people, I had a real supportive family, or cousins, and we'd have family dinners of 50 people every week. So I had a lot of support. So a lot of people are just trying to thinking, well, if this is a phase, we don't know why you're drinking so heavily, but this is a phase. And they thought at some point I would just develop some other thing that would keep me from drinking. My mother thought that if I was dating someone, I would drink less. My cousins thought that or other people thought if I was successful in school or I got things I wanted, then I'd maybe drink less. And none of those things actually stopped me from drinking. When I had a stated girlfriend, I drank less often, but whenever I went out with my buddies, I drank as heavily as I normally would. So it would curtail the drinking some, but it wouldn't stop it. But I knew I was in trouble for quite a while. When I went to treatment when I was 16, I knew I was in trouble.
Yeah.
I went to treatment and they said, we think you have a problem drinking. And I said, I do, but I have more trouble when I'm not drinking. When I'm not drinking and you put me in a social situation or an odd situation where I'm not sure how to act or what to do, and I felt awkward, that seemed worse for me than drinking a little bit too much. And it was probably between the ages of 18 and 20 when things really got out of hand, whenever I was not living in my parents' house anymore. My parents had gotten to a point that said, look, you either need to quit drinking or move out. And they were serious about this. My mother had been going to Al-Anon for several years since I was 16, and I was now almost 19. And she said, we love you, but we can't take this. I would never come home. I would start drinking. I would black out. My curfew was midnight. I made curfew twice from the time I was 15 to the time I was 18. Now, I figured out a method where my parents didn't know I was not coming home. I actually would set their clock backward and then wake them up. And when they'd wake up and look at the clock, it was right at curfew time. So they didn't realize I wasn't making it home for curfew, except for a few times where I blacked out or couldn't drive and missed coming home before 7 o'clock in the morning. But most times I'd get home about 4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. That was a pretty typical time for me. And set the clock back and wake my mother up, and she'd look at the clock, and I'd go get a snack and eat and go to bed, and I'd reset her clock before going to bed. And she never knew. She never knew. So there wasn't a lot of consequences because of my drinking with my parents. There wasn't consequences academically because of my drinking. There wasn't consequences in sports because of my drinking. So all these other things that normally happen for people that they slow down their drinking or interfere with it, I didn't have those until I was 18 or 19. I started getting DUIs and crashing cars. At 18, I bought a car. I totaled it 5 weeks later. I bought another car when I turned 19. Didn't total that one, crashed that one several times and got DUIs each time. I got 3 DUIs in a 6-month period of time of driving. With the DUIs racking up, I tried to get into the Navy to get some of those expunged. And before I could officially enlist in the Navy, I got a 3rd DUI, which kind of wiped out that option. And then from there, I actually went to treatment 2 weeks later because I was running out of options. I had a lot of legal consequences, and I was looking at some potential felony charge for DUIs. And so I thought going to treatment would make it look good in court in front of the judge. And luckily, before I finished treatment, I really, at that point, realized that things weren't working out with my drinking. I really need to make a change.
Yeah, let's talk about treatment a little bit if we can, because this is prevention, treatment, and recovery that are all fundamental when you talk about moving forward to get help and sustainable help. But treatment is often, I think, confusing for family, friends, loved ones of the person going through treatment and for the person going through treatment themselves. Because as you know, it's not necessarily you walk into a facility, you stay there for however long, and then you magically walk out and everything has gone away. What was your experience like with treatment, and how important is it to have a space to share stories about that?
Yeah. I had 2 treatment episodes, and they were very different experiences. The first one, when I was 16, the staff really didn't understand my condition because of my age. They thought I was not potentially not alcoholic. I was drinking heavily for some reason. Some other circumstances were promoting my drinking, and I believe for me that I am physically, genetically predisposed to be an alcoholic. Generational exposure to that. On males in my family, the males are alcoholic much more commonly than the females, but there are some female alcoholics in my family also. So when I walked in, I was 16. I didn't look like your typical alcoholic. I didn't look like your alcoholic that was homeless. Now, a few years later, I was homeless, but I still didn't look like a homeless alcoholic. You know, I was a bright kid. I had a lot of family support. I was healthy. The doctors were surprised when they did the blood work. One of the doctors made the comment. He's like, "Your liver is damaged. You're a healthy person, and your liver is damaged because of the amount of alcohol you're drinking." He's like, I couldn't imagine how much you're actually drinking, because nothing else would create this problem for you. But he was concerned. I think he was right. I even still today, after over 30 years of not drinking, I still have some liver, some signs of liver damage. So I was drinking very heavily as a kid. But if you gave me a week of not drinking, I looked pretty good. I looked healthy. I got sleep. I was feeling better. So the first episode was really them not really understanding how severe my alcoholism was. And I wasn't telling them the complete truth also. I was minimizing it. In that, I got a lot of education. My family felt bad. They thought they had done something wrong. My parents thought maybe they did something wrong, that they didn't do something that would have prevented this. So they really questioned themselves more than they really focused on me. And at the very last couple of days in treatment, they said, "Do you think you're going to never drink again?" And I was like, I just don't see how that's possible. I don't see how it's possible to never drink again. When I got out of treatment, I did go to a meeting. I walked into an AA meeting in my hometown. It was a small town in South Louisiana. There were 4 people in the meeting. Every one of those individuals were over 65 years old. When I walked in, I was 16 years old. And I walked in, and the meeting was in a room right next to the library. And when I walked in, I asked them, "Is this AA meeting?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I'm here for the meeting." They're like, "No, kid, you're not here for the meeting." I said, "No, if this is an AA meeting, I'm here for the meeting." And they're like, "No, the library is next door. You must need the library." I said, "No, I'm an alcoholic. I came for this meeting." And they really debated with me. They were like, "You don't need to be here, kid. We don't know what's going on in your life, but you're too young to be an alcoholic." And my mother had to bring me to the meeting. I didn't have a driver's license. So I left. She picked me up, an hour after she dropped me off. And she said, "How was it?" I said, "It's awful." I said, "They didn't want me in the meeting. They told me I didn't belong there. And this is the only meeting in town, and it only happens once a week." And this was in 1985, actually. 1985. There weren't virtual meetings.
Yeah.
There wasn't online meetings or online information even. I mean, computers were really new back then. So there wasn't an internet option that's out there today. And I told them, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I really don't. I don't know how I'm going to not drink, and I don't know where to go. And she knew that. And, the next weekend I went out with some friends, was not going to drink. And after hanging out with them for about 30 minutes and they're drinking and I'm not, I just couldn't take it anymore. And I took someone's beer and I said, I'll buy you more, but this is going to be mine. And I drank the guy's beer. So that was my first experience. My second experience, my mother, fortunately for me, my mother had gone to Al-Anon and continued to go to Al-Anon for the entire time that I'd gone from the first treatment episode to the second. In the second episode, my family was done. My parents had asked me to either quit drinking or move out. I was gone the next day. I moved out of their home. I cleared everything out of the room. I even vacuumed the carpet. I cleaned everything. I said, okay, I understand. This is really, you have the right. This is your home. By then, I'd had the state police at their house and had the local police at their house. And it was very disrupted because, I'd get in accidents and they'd have to come to the hospital and they were worried about me. And so for years, they really disrupted their lives. And my parents would fight over it. My mother had divorced when I was young and she remarried also when I was young. My stepfather had been there since I was 3 years old. So they were having problems in their marriage because of me. They would fight over, what are we going to do with this kid? Do we kick him out? Do we let him stay here? Do we make rules? What do we do? And they didn't know what to do because nothing really actually stopped my drinking. So I'm actually not in my brother's wedding. I wasn't in the wedding party, and I wasn't in any of the pictures for the wedding because right after the ceremony, I left to go get some more alcohol. Now, they had some alcohol there, but it wasn't enough. So I left to go get more. By the time I returned, they had taken all the wedding photos. So I wasn't, so just one episode after another, where my family loved me, but they had absolutely no idea what to do with me. And I couldn't stop my drinking. I'd been going to meetings for years. I'd go to meetings intoxicated. Wow. I was trying, but it just was not working. And so the second time I went to treatment, a couple of weeks in, my mother finally, the staff helped her, and the family decided that, look, if Todd wants to keep drinking, then Todd can, but that's his life. We don't want to participate in that life, and he can do what he wants. If Todd wants to quit drinking, that's great. We want him to quit drinking, but we don't trust him. So we had an agreement, me and my family. The third week of my treatment stay of a 4-week stay, that I can call home every 3-4 months and just tell my family, check in, say, hey, I'm okay. If I was sober, I can do that. If I was sober for a year, then they would consider me attending family functions and being involved in the family. And that was the agreement. And I thought that was a fair deal because of the number of times I had really disrupted their world. So that was the agreement. And from there, I went to a extended care program, a sober living. And I stayed in that program for 9 months, and I actually ended up volunteering to help them out after I finished the program. They asked me to volunteer to help cover some shifts. They actually hired me shortly after that. So I was 20 years old. They hired me as a house manager. And the next year I was starting college. Wasn't sure what I was going to do for college, but I had an interest in psychology, and they started a counselor training program in the city I was living in. And I got into the program. I was the second student in that program. It was a year-long training program. I was the second person in that program and completed it. And I've been working in the field of addiction ever since. Mm-hmm. So that second experience was really more about, it was not my family's problem. The first time I went to treatment, it was really my family's problem. The second time I went to treatment, it became my problem. Mm-hmm. I then had a problem with my drinking. I then had a situation that other people weren't going to try to take care of for me. They supported me in me taking care of that for myself. And they told me to find the resources to take care of that. But they were not going to be the resource. They knew at that point that they were no longer going to be able to help me with the condition I had, that I need to go and find professionals and other people who had experience with this to help me deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really powerful to understand, as so often in life, once you start being accountable for yourself, that's really where a lot of change can happen. And I do want to remind our live viewers here, we have 11 now, which is really nice. If you do have questions for Todd, please don't hesitate and put those in the comment box. I like to, this might be a weird question for you, but I know that it's one that people who are not familiar with this condition, as you rightfully called it, it is a disease, is a condition. So a lot of people say, well, why don't you just stop? They cannot understand that you just can't stop. And I know it's not easy, but do you think how would you convey why you can't just stop?
Okay. I think that part of the condition is really centered in the brain. And there's a maladaptive component in the brain that in the emotional seat of the brain confuses alcohol. The feeling that an alcoholic gets is not the same that a social drinker gets when they drink alcohol. When an alcoholic drinks, their brain actually turns alcohol into different chemicals, and those chemicals create a euphoric experience that a non-alcoholic will not experience. So it's not the same kind of effect. So being that the alcoholic has an effect, just like I tell people, like if you love strawberries, it doesn't matter if other people in your family love strawberries or not. When you see strawberries, you want them. You know, you like them, and they can tell you how bad strawberries are, and they can tell you that the latest research in strawberries is that it's going to shorten your life by 10 years, and you're like, well, I really love these, or chocolate, or whatever. It's a chemical response in the brain that produces the phenomena, what they call it, the phenomena of craving. So you have two parts. There's a physical allergy to it. They call it allergy, and then the other one is it's coupled with. So the allergy is the response, and then the mental obsession that comes with that, because there's another part of the brain that's like the same component that's obsessive compulsive, that people have anxiety or obsessive compulsive thoughts. It triggers that part of the brain also. So basically the way they describe it is that the first drinks makes you thirsty for the second drink, and the second drink makes you thirsty for the third drink. So most social drinkers, after the first and second drink, they're satisfied. The alcoholic, the first and second drink only makes you want to drink even more. So there's a brain response to this. And what happens is that people can't control that part of their brain. Once you trigger it and once you activate it, it has a life of its own and it gets stronger. And as that part of you happens, as that phenomenon happens, the rest of your life starts to crumble. So imagine that if I started drinking as a teenager, and I felt better than before once I started drinking. So I had a euphoric experience with that. So you're telling me as a teenager, now the best thing I've ever experienced, I need to stop that. And so that just continues on for quite a while. And in the same time, now I'm starting to damage all the other things in my life that are helpful. So the relationship with friends, the relationship with parents, the relationship with just people in general. I'm having problems in those areas of life. I'm doing well in school, but I'm not going to be able to go to college. I knew as a teenager that if I went to college while I was drinking, I would never pass. I knew that. So when I got out of high school, I didn't go to college. All the rest of my friends did. I didn't go to college because I knew if I did, all I'd do was drink. So I decided to delay the process of going to college. So what happens is alcohol over time becomes the only thing in my world that I'm excited about, because all the other things in my world are falling apart, are getting diminished, or getting taken away from me bit by bit. So it really becomes more and more difficult to say now, after you've lost the opportunity to go to college, and you've lost the opportunity to live in your family's home, and you've lost the opportunity to feel good about yourself and the things that you're doing and the relationships you're having. And now that you lost those things, now you have to give up the one remaining thing that you think is a solution to any of your problems, which is drinking. Now you have to give that up also. So it becomes pretty difficult to give that up.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about how, for a 65-year-old who was going through recovery and this kid walks in at 16 years old, they must be thinking he hasn't gone through any divorces. He hasn't lost his job. He hasn't, ruined his life because he's so young. And, you really touch on that. I think it's really important to bring up the overlap of mental health and substance abuse, the predispositions that you had and all of that. And I also wanted more information of if you could explain to us how effective medication-assisted treatment is in recovery, especially for those who have it because of the way that you're describing it, and why it could be really remiss to not mention that and set yourself up for a long-term recovery and support, because people are thinking, well, it's just a matter of will and not necessarily, plugging that in there.
Right. And the interesting part with that, like, I think each generation thinks that they had it tougher than the generation coming next. I didn't walk 5 miles to school both ways, and my parents did, and then so I think my kid has it better than I had it. So there's some of that sort of, you didn't suffer the way I suffered. Situation when people walk into the rooms of recovery. Sometimes I think that the drugs have also changed. I drank alcohol. The drugs out there now, the more commonly used drugs out there now, heroin. Before that, it was crack. Before, there's other drugs that just devastated people's lives in a different way than alcohol did for me. But what I found is that those drugs are so powerful and affect the brain in certain ways that when you stop using, you don't just automatically feel better. That those, chemicals they're called mood altering substances. They will alter your mood. If you alter your mood long enough, when you stop using that substance, your mood is not stable. That you may have anxiety, you may have depression, you may have psychosis, you may have a lot of things that mimic, it's organic disorders, mental health disorders, but it's chemically created. And a lot of people do resume a normal function after some time. But that time frame may be a year or 2 years before they stabilize again and their function restores itself again. But in that 1 to 2 years, some people do need some medication to help to counter that. Medication for anxiety, medication for depression, medication for psychosis. The other medications, and those are all medically assisted interventions, medication assisted interventions, but there's also other medications that are for craving. That the craving for some of these drugs are so powerful that it's so difficult and so distracting. Again, if you go back to the part of the brain that's obsessive compulsive, that the brain will think about that drug in a way that might be very slight or might be pretty profound. But that process can take just a fraction of a second to occur. That you wake up in the morning with a plan, and before you even get finished with getting ready for the day, you've gotten distracted on something. Something didn't work out the way you thought it was, and people relapse. That's simple. So medically assisted therapy that's out there today are phenomenal drugs. They don't get someone high, but what they do is they manage the craving and they manage some of the brain functions that allow somebody to be stable enough to function in the world again. So if you can function again in the world, that's pretty significant in early recovery. One of the things that happens is that if you take somebody and their base functional capacity and their potential of what they had before they got addicted, and then you look at how they're functioning when they get sober, this is not the same person. The person that had all this potential, that could have gotten a job, could have gone to college, could have gotten into relationships, could be a parent, and now function at a level that they can't hold the job. They can't stay in a healthy relationship. They can't parent their children. They can't do these things. And now you take away the substance that was, distracting them from all that stuff and altering the way they felt about all that stuff. You take that away, and they're not able to just feel comfortable enough to function in the world, and they're challenged. There's a lot of challenges that come with that early sobriety. So the medication helps with at least some of the physiological cravings so the individual can function to a level to where they can start improving their lives incrementally. They can go to work. They can keep a job. They can have some conversation with the family. They can go to family functions and not be the one person that destroys the whole event, so they can function better. And medically assisted therapy or treatment interventions are not intended, the ones that we implement, are not intended to be a lifetime of being on a medication. Right. But if somebody can stabilize and start to improve their life again, that in itself, most people don't want to stay on medication. A lot of people in early recovery, don't want to get on medication, which is the unique and situation is that if it's not a mood altering substance, addicts and alcoholics tend not to want to get on the medication. So they're not just trying to take any drug that they can find. They're trying to take drugs that change the way they feel.
Right.
But if the medication that they take helps them function in the world to where they can start achieve the things that they want to achieve, they do much better.
Mm. Yeah, if I understand you correctly, if we look at the second treatment, that was, I believe you mentioned 6 or 9 months.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have a very challenging story here, but there is also a message of hope here, and that is that if you're willing to give 6 months of treatment a try, that does have the potential to change the course of your life.
Absolutely.
And that is something, of course, that you basically, that message of hope is the foundation of your career.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very important to underline. And what would you tell people who just can't see that hope for themselves right now?
Sure. And the research supports that. It's not just my experience, but the national research out there supports that the longer someone is engaged in treatment, the better they do in recovery. Just like I think any area of life. If you want to be any profession, if you want to be a banker, then you have to stay in the industry and you have to be around the events, the financial situations to improve your skills to get to where you can eventually be the kind of person you want to be in that industry. Recovery is the same way. You have to have enough exposure to it with enough people that are doing the functions that help you stay sober to achieve where you to be sober. It's just like, if you gave me and I've done this, I try to do home projects. I'm awful at it. So say I want to build a shed, and I just buy a book and I look at the instructions and start building it, and it might come together as a shed, but it's going to be a poorly built shed. But if I was to bring in people that had built sheds before and were construction guys and they knew what to do along the way, they would help me how to adjust for things. They would say, look, this isn't the way you do this. You do this part first, and then you do this, and then you build it this way. And then that with people that know how to do it, at the end of that project, it would look like a usable shed compared to me doing it on my own. And most people, I think there's an urgency with people in early recovery. They want so desperately to achieve something and get it right and show you that they want to do it. There's such a desperation to make that happen that sometimes they don't ask for help, and they don't want to be patient, and they don't want to wait for the process to happen. But for most people, it will take 1 to 3 years to create the foundation to where they can perform in a functional level to where they can be on the right track with their lives. And it's such a wonderful thing to see happen when it does happen. But the reality is, like, I work within the 30-day model for treatment, and 30 days, you're just stabilizing an individual physically, physiologically. Their brain functions are just starting to stabilize. It's going to take them normally 1 year to 2 years for their brain to function at a capacity that is pretty close to what they would have had before their addiction. So just that alone is part of the process. So, and then stress is a major limiting factor in early recovery. Most adults can get up and tolerate a fair amount of stress in the world. And alcoholics and drug addicts, newly sober, cannot. There's part of their brain that is easily triggered by stress. And instead of having a response, like wake up in the morning and the car doesn't start, and for some reason the battery's dead, instead of just being like, oh, I need to call AAA and I need to call somebody to help me get my car started so I can go to work, they're like, that's it, I'm done. And they abandon the car and they call somebody else and they go and use. Their ability to handle stress is a major issue. So having a supportive environment where people say, don't worry about it, I'll help you with that, is significant. Like I went to a program where people said, you don't have to worry about paying the rent. We're going to charge you a flat fee every month that's going to take care of the rent, the food, the utilities, everything. Your basic needs are met. It's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you need the basic needs, and we can look at the next level, and that's social interactions. And then we meet that. Yeah, I'm living with 15 people. I don't have to make friends. I'm living with 15 people. We're going to have to interact with each other, and then there's therapists and staff to support that. So whenever we can't interact with each other in a healthy way, they intervene. And then from that, so you just kind of stair step this process upward, but in an environment that knows how to do that. Where I couldn't do it before. I was at my parents' house the first time. They loved me. My parents would have done anything for me, but they had no idea where to start. They had absolutely no idea where to start. When I went to a facility and then I went to an extended care program, they knew exactly what I needed to do. I thought I needed a car. They thought I needed a job. And I got a job, and eventually I got a car. But I thought I need a car first, and then I could find a job. They're like, no, you're going to go down here. You're going to talk to this person. They'll hire you. I was like, I don't know who they are. I was like, we already have it set up. They hire anybody we send down there. They had the road kind of paved ahead of me that I didn't even know that was the path I need to take. So being in an extended care program does that for people. It just continuously adds resources and services to what their needs are when they don't even realize it. Because we all want the same thing. Yeah. Working in a facility, I want somebody to walk out of the facility and go on to have a great and wonderful life. They walk out, they want a great and wonderful life. The process that we lay out for somebody to get that great and wonderful life is one way. What they have for themselves is normally a different path. And oftentimes it doesn't happen because they just can't see the pitfalls along the way and the path that they're trying to take.
So I have a question for you. You covered a lot of good stuff. You covered the role that employment plays in recovery and everything really. My heart really goes out to everybody who is, right now, everyone from all walks of life are facing challenges because of COVID. And I think that there are a lot of people who would normally not find themselves in the situation where they are turning to a substance, be it alcohol or drugs, to get by, because the stress level that they're experiencing now is nothing that they've ever experienced in their life. And it is every day. It's habitual. It's constant. And there seems like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. But some of the people, because again, they're from all walks of life, maybe corporate, maybe lawyers, maybe doctors, there are people in high positions that are really struggling. And maybe they just don't feel like going to a treatment facility is for them. What would you say to them to overcome that barrier between them and their recovery? And how do you address that issue? Because I even know people that really need some hope, and I don't think they know how they can do that without abandoning their pride.
I could say one of the foundational struggles for people in addiction is a sense of isolation and not being connected to other people and not having people kind of on their team and with them. So if an individual at any socioeconomic level is in a situation where they feel isolated, they're in trouble. They're in trouble. Some of the most successful individuals in the country have the highest rate of suicide, I think, for that reason, that they feel less connected to people in a genuine way than an average person would. So anyone struggling with trying to figure out how to solve a problem of addiction and abusing chemicals, it's going to need someone to talk to. The hope is that they find somebody that's informed and experienced to help them when they do have the conversation. Like I said, when I had the conversation with my family about my addiction, we've had multiple conversations about my drinking and the problems that created. They just simply didn't know what to do with it once we had the conversation. So my suggestion to people when they call me and say, what do I do? I say, who do you have that experience with helping in this scenario? It could be a clergy person. It could be a doctor. It could be an addictionologist. If it's a professional that says, I can't stop going to work, I can't take 30 days out of my career to do this, then I normally say, find yourself a really good addictionologist and start there. And they'll tell you if your condition is so severe that you can't function with just that amount of support, that you need more, they'll tell you that. But find some people that you can get on your team that's committed to helping you with the condition you have, and listen to them, trust them. Because that's really what made the difference for me. By the time I really, at 20 years old, I said, I can no longer trust my own decision making around my drinking or what I'm doing in life. I really couldn't. I came to that resolution that was just the honest truth. So I let other people who were had my best interests at heart, but also were experienced. And whatever they told me to do, I would do. I never intended to be a therapist. I never intended to work in this industry. I had other aspirations, but my aspirations were killing me, you know. So I just decided that I had to, at least for a period of time. My period of time in the beginning was 5 years. When I was 20 years old, I said for the next 5 years, whatever anybody told me to do, that one, they were sober, they were healthy, and they were functional, and they had my best interest at heart. I really had to take a serious look at doing that. If there's no reason why I actually couldn't do it, I needed to do it. You know, if it didn't harm me in some way, I just needed to do it. I could always change my mind later after I did it. But I really trusted other people more than I trusted myself. So I really just found some people that I could trust. I said, I need you to help me. I need you to tell me what I need to do. And it wasn't an easy process. I'm sure at 20, it might have been a little easier than somebody in their 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s. But at the same time, if I continued to drink until I was 30 years old, there would have been no one around to support me. Absolutely no one. So I could only imagine that the longer you stay actively addicted, the less support you're going to have from family. So you're probably going to have to resort to trusting other people that are professionals to help you with this.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a hello from Stacy Rooks, who is also watching us. Thank you, Stacy, for joining us. Well, you lead a center that is very effective, and I am sure some people will see this and they will see and receive the message of hope. How can they get more information? What if they are worried about confidentiality, and they what is the easiest way to start the journey to being admitted to your center?
We do have experienced staff members that help on the very front end. We have some phenomenal, it's basically like a call center. You call into the number on our website for admission. If we're not the place for the person, we'll help them find a place for them. We're not the type of program that says, if you don't come to us, good luck. You know, hope you find something. We will walk with you through the process until you find a place that you can go. If you're not appropriate for us, we'll tell you. If you call us and you say, this is what I'm doing, do I need to come to your center? If it's appropriate to come to the center, we'd say, yeah, you know, that'd be the right thing to do. If not, we'd have you maybe go to the outpatient program, whatever it is. Our goal is really to serve people and help. Mm-hmm. The owners that started this organization really did it with the intention of providing a service in San Antonio that they thought was not present. So they didn't do it for a business. They actually have other companies and other businesses that probably are easier to run and profitable. And so they didn't start this center to make money. They really started to serve a need that they thought was there, but not being serviced in the way they thought they can create a program that would help people. So that's really the origins and the mission behind our center. And so it permeates all throughout the organization, that the staff will help clients and help people, but we want them to get what they need. We know that at the end of the day, if we help somebody, that's more important than whether they can nurse or not. We really just want people to be sober, be healthy, and have a great life. And I'm fortunate that we have amazing staff, from the admissions department through the intake and through the frontline staff and the clinicians and the doctors and the nurses and everyone in the organization really has a passion for helping. So we really would like to help in any way possible. I get calls regularly, and those people may never come to New Choices Treatment Center, and that's okay with us. We just want them to get the help they need.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can facilitate that in any way, we'd be happy to. The easiest way to find this is probably on the internet, New Choices Treatment Center, and then from there, there's information about insurance coverage and benefits and a call number. And we really do try to take calls 24/7. And it's kind of hard at night, in the middle of the night, to take that call, but we have staff that make every attempt to pick up every call that comes through.
Yeah, there's. I also know there's a live chat on your website, so there's really different avenues to start the conversation, and that's really the most important part. Get the conversation started, listen to your options, and know that no matter what, you will be shown a way and you will be helped.
And what's the website address?
It's newchoicestc.com, newchoicestc.com, and we'll also put that in the description of the video here later, as it will be remaining on the website, on the Facebook page, of course.
And Shankar, if I go back just a second, you asked about privacy and confidentiality.
Yeah.
All staff are trained on confidentiality. If a person calls in, their information and what they ask, the questions they ask, and any of their information is confidential. That no one outside of our organization, actually only the staff members that are required to have that information would have access to it. So not every staff member would have access to it either. But certainly, if a family member called and said, I need to know if my loved one is there, we actually can't divulge anything. If the client comes in and they admit and they really aren't sure how much involvement they want to have with their family and how much they want their family to know about their use, they actually can limit them what information would be divulged to family members. So basically a scenario where somebody admits today and then tomorrow their family calls and says, I want to know if they're there. If we don't have a release of information to provide any information, then we simply say, I'm sorry, I can take a message from you and post that in the public bulletin board. But beyond that, I can't do anything beyond that. And then we would just simply talk to the client and say, hey, so-and-so called. They're curious about how you're doing. Are you okay with us communicating and letting them know you're here and you're getting some help or not? And then we go from there.
Yeah.
I just want to say you are a true gem and a real, we celebrate you and your recovery and for being an example of showing us that you can live a healthy and rewarding life. And thank you for educating us, because it shouldn't just be, in my opinion, a month out of the year that we celebrate people recovering and their gains that they've made by making hard choices and going through the steps that it takes to be on a sustainable road of recovery. And you turn around and you're changing a lot of people's lives and saving them from an early death, some of them. So we really do want to celebrate you, and we're happy to know you. And everyone at the center is just like you. They're real. They're very, very real. And I think it's really important to have professionals and experts that are real and that can relate to you, be it because of their own story or because of their family. So I definitely do want to continue to spread this message. We want to spread this message of hope, and hope that everybody knows that you're just as real as you are right now. If they reach out, they'll get you or someone else that is going to be able to help them get on the path that they need to a sustainable recovery.
Thank you, Antréa. I think you're right in that I'm not the only individual at the organization that's passionate and excited about seeing somebody coming for help. Every staff member is excited to see coming for help. We really do celebrate that. We know that somebody walking in the door is walking in with a very little hope in life. I mean, they've tried everything they possibly can try on their own. They may have been to other centers and other programs before, and they don't feel very hopeful. And when they walk in, we just want them to understand that we'll walk with them in the process for as long as we can, as long as they let us. to where they can feel hopeful again, and they can feel like they can get their life back. Because it's a difficult industry to work in, because there are people that struggle. But whenever it does happen, and it happens often, when it does happen, you can see somebody reunite with their families and to be the parent they want to be and to have success in their life again. And success is being like, hey, I've been sober for a month or 3 months or 6 months. We have clients that come back to tell us, hey, I've been sober for 9 months, and to celebrate with us the achievements that they're having. There's nothing really better than that. To be a part of a process where somebody transforms. There's really nothing that equates to that. And those clients get to help other people walking in the door the same way and see themselves as somebody struggling, walking in, and they can see themselves in that position that they were in months ago. And the new person doesn't believe it. The new person does not believe it. Why are you so excited about me being here? Everyone else in my world does not want to see me right now. And you're actually saying things that don't make any sense to me. They're intrigued by it. They're intrigued that, you seem to really mean it, but that doesn't make any sense to them when they arrive. How can you be excited to see me and know me? And all the things that have happened to that individual for weeks and months before they get to us. And then we're excited to see them. And they're thinking, you're just saying that. You're just saying that. You don't really believe that. You just say that to everybody. And the reality is we probably do say it to everybody. But they don't know why until they've been with us for a few days or a couple of weeks. And then they start to experience it. They start to experience hope again. And then it makes sense to them, because then it connects to something inside of them, and not just a mental thing. It really starts to connect to something inside them again that they've lost that connection with. And it's either going to really scare them. Sometimes it does. It just scares them because it's a little strange, and but it's powerful, and they don't know whether they should trust it yet, but they're intrigued by it at the same time. And it's really that magical thing that we watch that process happen over and over and over again. And that's the thing that creates more excitement for us, because we think it's possible. We think it's possible when you walk in the door that could happen for you also. But we want to see it happen.
Yeah, and I think that is one very beautiful aspect about new choices, is that, to my knowledge, probably most people who work there have actually had to walk that journey and are in recovery. And that's really very powerful, because certain things in life you can only understand if you have gone through it. And that's exactly what you'll get there. No BS, just genuine, authentic help with people that really get you and understand you. And
shout out to Mary about it.
Yeah, and that's really powerful to witness. Now, we like to wrap this up always with the question of, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Todd, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I see myself in San Antonio at New Choices. Really do. I really enjoy being part of that team and getting to work with the people there. I really love this industry. It's what I've always done. I mean, I've been in this industry since I'm 20 years old, which is now 32 years.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic experience. It's not easy in a lot of ways, but at the same time, I couldn't imagine going into a traditional office and doing all the basic things that a person does at their job, and then walking out at the end of the week and people say, how was your week? And you're like, oh, it's good, because these things happen. And I talk to my friends that did go on to college right out of high school, and I talk about my week, and I talk about, the things that happen for the people that we serve. They're envious. They are like, wow, you really had the opportunity to do those kind of things. I was like, yeah, I get to do that. Like, yeah, my job is great because I moved up in positions and I got a title, but at the end of it, they feel pretty frustrated because they just feel like they're just doing the same thing over and over again. Our industry is so dynamic. It's complex and it's dynamic, and it's people helping people. I can see myself doing that for 20 more years. it's not the kind of thing that you say, I have enough. I'm done with that. I want to retire. But I can see myself.
Y'all are similar.
I certainly can see myself in new choices in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Why would I not be in that situation?
Well, I can speak on behalf of the ShankX team that it is a privilege for us to be able to support you in IT, marketing, web development, and everything. And we'll make sure together that New Choices grows and that together we can help more and more people. It is very, very fulfilling. And thank you for that opportunity. Thank you for the time tonight. And we wish you and everyone out there a great weekend.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Shankar. Thanks, Antréa.
All right. Bye.
Good night, Todd.